It's waiver wire time on Tuesday, November 12th. We welcome you to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. See you guys. Have a good one. It's going to be a fun show today. Before we started the show, instead of saying, okay, let's start, I said, see you guys. I don't know what that was all about, but the Giants, the Cardinals, the Bucks, and the Panthers are on bye. We've got some pretty good wide receivers. We got a couple of good quarterbacks on bye, and a couple of teams that we like to pick on for DST purposes on bye as well. So bye weeks are coming, and plan ahead as well. If you don't need anybody for this week, take a look at your roster for Fantasy Week 12 and see what you might need. But guys, in my estimation, there's a couple of good running backs to get today, right?
Not a bad week. Not a bad week with your bad puns.
Thanks. It was, because Estime. Thanks, everyone. Okay. Anyway, yeah, it's a good week for running. Finally, like a little bit of life at running back, but wide receiver not as good as usual. How would you characterize waiver wire this week, Jamey?
It's not bad. There are options that you can get short term and long term. I think for the running back position, there are some still good stash candidates. If you're starting to, see your team as a playoff contender that you want to have as potential lottery tickets. A lot of the same guys we talked about last week, Trey Benson, Blake Corum, some of those guys that could be league winners if they get opportunities. And then you mentioned that, Estime and Gus Edwards and potentially Cam Akers if he starts for an injured Aaron Jones. There are guys that could be, borderline starters or starters depending on what you need. Receiver's not as good as you said, but it's also not bad given the Colts situation and what they're dealing with, and the Brown situation. You got guys there that are going to get a lot of opportunities, a lot of targets, and I don't think matchups you fear. So some tight ends that are available due to injuries, and some quarterbacks. So there's, I always look at it this way: like, could I make a starting lineup out of the waiver wire guys? And it would be a bad starting lineup, but I can make a starting lineup.
I'd love to face that starting lineup. All right, so let's get our top three priorities here then, just on paper. Dave, I'll let you start.
Estimate's going to be number one. And after that, I think it's, we say this every week. It comes down to what you need. I feel like there's something for everybody. If you need a quarterback, Russell Wilson. If you need a wide receiver, I've got Pearsall at the top of my list. But you can make the case for one of the Colts guys. You can make the case for Jerry Jeudy. As gross as it sounds, he's given you double-digit PPR points each of his last two games. You can make the case for Mechie if you buy into him being the slot rest of season in Houston. That's to name a top three. Let's go with Estime number one, Pearsall number two, Russ three.
Russell Wilson facing Baltimore this week. There are definitely some quarterbacks with good matchups. So you should be able to find a quarterback that you like this week if you're in just any kind of normal league. So Estime, Pearsall, Russell Wilson. Jamey, your top three?
I'm going to go three running backs with Estime, Gus Edwards, and Cam Akers. I have a different receiver. I would take Alec Pierce first if Michael Pittman's back injury is going to be a problem. And I would take Bo Nix over Russell Wilson for this week and for rest of season, just based on matchups.
Yeah, so they both have great matchups this week. Bo Nix gets Atlanta. 5 of the last 6 quarterbacks to face the Falcons have scored 21 or more fantasy points. Russell Wilson going up against Baltimore. 5 of the last 6 quarterbacks to face Baltimore have scored 24 or more fantasy points. Nix, I guess what you could say, has a better long-term schedule. He has the Raiders after that. Okay. So yeah, quarterback's pretty good this week. The tough part with quarterback is, do you make a swap? Do you swap Aaron Rodgers for Bo Nix or Russell Wilson? Do you swap Matthew Stafford or Tua or something like that for those guys? I don't know how you feel about that, but
Rodgers, you can justify it because if you don't trust him against the Colts, and I think he'll be okay against the Colts. This is the type of defense that he's been picking apart. They have their bye next week, so it's easy to say, okay, I want to pivot to somebody who's got just as good a matchup, better situation, and don't have to worry about a 2-week scenario of who do I find to replace Rodgers next week.
Okay. Hey, 1 o'clock. What are you guys doing at 1 o'clock today?
Listening to you make up some stupid story about a game show that everybody loves.
Yeah. Who has more is the fun game that we play pretty much exclusively on CBS Sports Network Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern, but that's just one segment. It's a waiver wire segment. It's a waiver wire show, so it's a little buy low, little sell high. It's a good show. 1 p.m. Eastern, today, but we're also 1 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday and 1 p.m. Eastern on Friday. CBS Sports Network. Check your local listings. And if you missed that, you can catch it on youtube.com/fantasyfootballtoday. If you hit the videos tab, don't hit the live tab because we don't do it live. Hit the video tab, youtube.com/fantasyfootballtoday. Hopefully we'll see you on the network 1 p.m. Eastern, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, every week. Sometimes the times change, and I will alert you to that. I will also alert you to players who have good matchups, not just for this week. You can find players with 1 week of good matchups, but how about players with at least 2 weeks of good matchups? Justin Herbert, if you have him, or if he's might be available in some leagues, against the Bengals and then the Ravens and the Falcons in his next 3 games. Justin Herbert, woohoo! And that's also great news for, Quentin Johnston, Ladd McConkey.
Which Justin Herbert are we getting, though?
You would think that they'd have to throw more against the Bengals and the Ravens, at least in the next 2 weeks, than they did last week against the Titans.
Well, we're going to find out how good this defense is, because they've been fantastic, but they've also played a lot of bad offenses.
Yes, the Chargers, absolutely. One of the easiest schedules got to be in football so far in terms of just the offenses they've faced. So Herbert's got great matchups. Bo Nix, I mentioned Atlanta this week, and then Las Vegas, and then Jatavian Sanders has a bye this week, but he comes out of the bye and he faces 2 of the 3 worst teams. Actually, the only team worse than the 2 teams that Jatavian Sanders will face after the bye against tight ends is Carolina. So he can't face them, but after the bye, he gets the Chiefs and the Bucks. They're 31st and 30th against tight ends. A few players with bad matchups in multiple weeks coming up. Geno Smith, San Francisco and Arizona. I don't know if we're going to say they're terrible matchups, but they're not favorable. Jameis Winston, the Saints are 5th against quarterbacks. Not sure if we actually buy it.
No.
But Jameis Winston has the Saints, then the Broncos, then the Steelers, then the Chiefs. And then I think you could say the same thing about the Cleveland wide receivers. Now, the Saints aren't not good against wide receivers, but after that, the Broncos and the Steelers and the Chiefs, not such great matchups for the Browns, which is tough because if you saw Cedric Tillman out there on waivers, would he be, and he's 78% rostered or something like that. So he's available in some leagues, got dropped during the bye.
Number 1.
He would be ahead of everyone?
Yes.
Is he that much better than Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore? Because the targets are fairly similar.
He's been more productive than Jerry Jeudy and Elijah Moore. So if the targets are the same, why would you not take the guy who's producing at a higher level?
I would, but is he that much better?
I think that's probably a FAAB question. So would you have to spend more FAAB to get Tillman because everybody's going to see what he's done and would want that more so than what Jeudy has done and what Elijah Moore has done. Moore is tough to trust because he's just been getting opportunities, just not producing at the same level as the other 2 guys in the Jameis Winston starts. Tillman started to do it in the first game that Cooper missed. So, you look at that and you say, okay, it's an Amari Cooper opportunity. So, yeah, I would spend more for him. But in terms of what do I need for my team, if I need to save some FAAB, I'll try and get Jeudy or Moore and just hope that they continue to get the targets and produce at a higher level.
I'm really not interested
Tillman to me
in
is the
Moore.
best one.
Oh, sorry, Jamey. I'm not as interested in Moore. Short area target, slot guy, full PPR only. Judy's been okay, and it's a 3-game sample size with Tillman, at least 18 PPR points in each game.
Yeah.
Seems to make plays after the catch, good physical receiver, young, getting an opportunity. I'd buy into that.
Speaking of buying, Dave, let's talk about FAAB real quick. But before that, buy or sell. That was a horrible game last night. Ugh.
I mean, it was sloppy. There were a bunch of turnovers in the game, but it was entertaining.
It was a letdown. What a letdown.
It was, we were expecting tons of touchdowns, and it's like both offenses would drive, and then there'd either be a turnover or a field goal. So
felt like a preseason game.
Did kind of feel that. It really, really stunk. All right, how much FAAB are we spending, Dave, on it's FAAB's like, okay, look, we're in week 11, right? FAAB's an interesting question right now, but if Estime we're out there, I guess, starting with him, how much FAAB are we spending?
It depends. If you're desperate for a running back and you're somebody who's starting for an NFL team and even playing some 3rd downs for them, I'd go what do you have left? Most of it. Estime would make sense to just kind of break the bank for, depending on how desperate you were for a running back or if you were counting on a Broncos running back. So call it minimum 30%, but it could be maximum 100% of what you've got left. I don't know if there's anybody else that I'd even go more than 15% on as far as the guys who are widely available that we talk about. Obviously, there's exceptions. If you see Cedric Tillman, if you see Dobbs, for example, you'd spend up more for those guys. But like I like Pearsall, and we talked about the Browns' other receivers besides Tillman. I don't know if I'm going more than 15% for any of those guys.
Any disagreement, Jamey?
No, I don't think it's a big FAAB week in terms of there's somebody that is an add and start rest of season difference maker right now. So the thing that I think you want to do is case specific. Need to win. Got to get that guy to fill a starting spot. Okay, you're spending what you have to spend, but you can make a case for about 4 or 5 quarterbacks. You can make a case for a couple of tight ends. You can make a case for 3 or 4 receivers. You can make a case for 2 running backs that are going to be somewhat similar. So I don't think it's I'm targeting this guy because he's a starter right away and also starter rest of season.
How good do you think Audric Estime is going to be going forward? He had 14 carries for 53 yards at Kansas City. He's played in 6 games, doesn't have a target so far, but he's only played a lot in 1 game, and that was last week. And Sean Payton said he's going to continue to get more reps. He's got Atlanta and Las Vegas coming up. Atlanta, they don't give up a lot of touchdowns to running backs, but that seems kind of fluky. You can run on Atlanta. Las Vegas is horrible. So, just how good. The playoff schedule kind of stinks for him. Colts is good, but then the Chargers and the Bengals on the road. But yeah, like I don't want to get too excited about a guy who's going to get 14 carries for 70 yards, but hardly ever score and get no catches. But how good do you think Estime is going to be?
So you brought up a good point about the hardly ever score. I believe they have 2 rushing touchdowns from the running backs all season. It was Javonte Williams in the Saints game, right?
Wow.
So
I'll check.
McLaughlin has caught a couple, but they just haven't run a lot of touchdowns in.
No, you missed 1. So it's 3 for McLaughlin, 3 overall for the running backs, 2 for Williams, 1 for McLaughlin, 4 from Bo Nix.
So that's what you're dealing with right now. Now, you could say some of it is, I know there was the game, the Carolina game, I think it was, where Javonte didn't score. He had a couple of where he fell down at the 1, at least one time that I saw. So unlucky there, but you said it, no targets. That's not going to change to where he's a heavily targeted guy. And this is one of those situations where the other 2 guys aren't hurt. So Javonte is basically playing the passing downs role, and McLaughlin is playing the change of pace role. And so they're going to get some opportunities here. And it could be one of those games where, okay, Estime struggles on his first or second drive, and the other guy gets hot on their opportunities, and then Estime is not working very much. So I think you got to view him as a flex at best. He's better in 9.5 PPR than he is in full PPR. He's going to have to score some touchdowns along the way to justify starting him. But given the nature of what the running back position has been, so if you've been lucky and nobody's gotten hurt, you don't need him. If you're stuck, like Dave said, if you need a Broncos running back or you're stuck because of bye weeks, you're begging for somebody who's going to get maybe 15 total touches and the opportunity to face some of these defenses that he's facing. So it's trap backy. It's not going to be pretty, but you might need those 7-8 fantasy points, however they're coming, PPR, non-PPR, what he might give you just based on his rushing totals.
He might give you a win in week 12. Playing against Las Vegas, 6 teams on bye. I mean, here are the teams on bye in week 12. Atlanta, Buffalo, Cincinnati. Think about the running backs on just those 3 teams alone. Atlanta, Buffalo, Cincinnati, Jacksonville. You might be looking for a running back even if Jacksonville was playing in week 12. New Orleans and the Jets. A lot of running backs on bye in week 12. If my depth sucked at running back and Estime is sitting there and he's playing Vegas in week 12, I'm absolutely buying into his opportunity.
Yeah.
And as for third downs, like he played just as many third downs as Javonte last week. I don't know if that keeps up. I have no idea. He wasn't a prolific pass catcher at Notre Dame. I think he had like 26 catches over 3 seasons at Notre Dame. It's not pretty, but he's a runner. And he's physical, and he will get goal line opportunities, I would assume. And he right now looks like he's got that chance in Denver to be the number 1 running back.
All right, we're going to take a break. I will ask you who to drop for Audric Estime when we come back. But first, I want to remind everyone that if you have not signed up yet for BetMGM, use the bonus code FANTASY, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. So here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app. Sign up using the bonus code FANTASY. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use the bonus code FANTASY when you sign up. All right, quick break. News and notes. We'll update a lot of news, actually, to update you on here. Top 3 at each position. You know the drill. We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today. All right, would you drop Tank Bigsby for Audric Estime?
I would not like to, but if Bigsby's injury is going to linger, we find out today that he's, going to miss week 11, then that's an easy drop, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you drop Devin Singletary?
Easily.
I wouldn't be surprised if Singletary starts the Giants next game to kind of punish Tyrone Tracy, but I think that's a mirage, and you'll see Tracy be the lead back in New York soon.
I would be very shocked if they didn't go the other way and start him on purpose to build him up.
Would you rather have Tajay Spears or Audric Estime?
Either way, Tracy will play a lot. Estime over Spears.
Yeah, I think there's just more upside there, barring an injury.
I feel like Spears was one of the guys that, he has terrible matchups the next 2 games. I should have put him in the matchup alert column. He's got
are they terrible matchups, or are they games where game script could favor him?
So but like he's not going to run well, and he could. But Minnesota and Houston have very good run defense, and the Texans are really good against pass catching running backs too. That's his next 2 matchups: Minnesota and Houston. Yeah, those teams could put up some points and get him in the game more.
So that puts him on the field for more than half the snaps, and might give him a doorway to 10+ PPR points.
For what it's worth, he did average over 6 yards a carry against the Chargers.
Yeah.
And he has now scored in his last 3 healthy games 8.1 PPR points or more. So, not the best flex, but not the worst.
We can definitely drop Raheem Mostert. So I'll ask you just a few wide receivers. It doesn't necessarily have to be for Audric Estime, but would you drop Roma Dunze for your favorite waiver wire pickup?
The only reason I'm hesitant, I didn't put the Bears receivers as adds or drops, is I want to see if there's a coordinator change. I hope there is. As of Monday, they hedged. Eberflus hedged a little bit about what he's going to do. Maybe we hear something Tuesday. I would, in a vacuum, drop Odunze for him, but that could be one you regret.
Could be. I don't know how they got to fix the offensive line before any of these receivers can have a shot to do anything good outside of like one fortuitous play. And Eberflus said that there would be some sort of change. He's really hinted that they're going to change play callers. I don't know if that's I don't know how that's going to make things better for them. I really don't.
Would you drop DeMarcus Robinson?
Yes.
Yep.
All right, let's do some injuries, news, and notes. Okay, we've got a lot of teams that might change quarterbacks. The Giants could change their quarterback coming out of a bye. They did not commit to anyone. The Cowboys are sticking with Cooper Rush. They have Houston on Monday night. The Panthers did not commit to a quarterback coming out of their bye. The Colts are sticking with Joe Flacco for now. They're at the Jets this week. All we know about Trevor Lawrence this week is that he's questionable. And all we know about the Bears, they are sticking with Caleb Williams, but they are going to make some changes, as Jamey alluded to. Some changes on the offensively. Could be a new play caller. We'll see. Running back.
Raiders also, we don't know their starter.
Yep, the Raiders. We don't know who they will start. They just had their bye, and this week they are at Miami. So running back news. Brian Robinson Jr. was listed as limited. He plays Thursday at Philadelphia. Hopefully he plays Thursday at Philadelphia. Tank Bigsby, where he's got an injury. He left, came back. He left again. Aaron Jones. So they're optimistic that Aaron Jones could play this week. He's not going to practice on Wednesday in all likelihood. He's got these injured ribs. So Cam Akers at Tennessee, not the easiest matchup, but he could get some work there. But you should be pretty cautious because they are optimistic about Jones playing this week. I haven't seen anything on Najee Harris, so I assume he's fine. And the Bengals sign running back Gary Brightwell. I don't think that really matters. Still want Khalil Herbert as the handcuff, I would assume. Correct me if I'm wrong. If not, we'll move on.
Well, I think it's weird that, hold on. It's weird that they signed Brightwell. They tried out Leonard Fournette just a week after trading for Khalil Herbert. So I don't know. There's something that they're trying to improve on in that running back room.
John Harbaugh expects Deontay Johnson's workload to increase. Seattle head coach Mike McDonald expects DK Metcalf to practice on Wednesday. There was an article in The Athletic from Michael Sean Duggar that says JSN will be more involved, but it was more based on the schemes that they will see. Similar to what they saw last time they played when JSN in that huge game. Chris Olave is on IR, but has not been ruled out for the season. T. Higgins is day-to-day. He's been day-to-day for like 3 weeks. Keon Coleman is out this week against the Chiefs. Amari Cooper is improving. Tight end news, you got the Thursday game, Philadelphia at Washington, and Dallas Goedert and Devontae Smith, for that matter, were both listed as DNPs. I think we expect them to play. Dalton Kincaid, though, not sure we expect him to play. He's got knee injury. He gets the amazing matchup. Wait till you hear who Jamey's number one waiver wire tight end is. If a lot of the guys in the shallower leagues are not available, he could be Dawson Knox. You just heard. I just spoiled it. Sam Laporta left with a shoulder injury, so we prefer Dawson Knox to Brock Wright if we're going backup tight ends. But Laporta could play this week. They haven't ruled him out.
Right.
Offensive line, we got the Jets with their left tackle getting an MRI for his neck. The Saints lost their left tackle. Don't know the severity there. The Colts, same thing. The Bears have almost no starting offensive linemen left. Tristan Wirfs, the right tackle or the left tackle for the Bucs, he's got an MCL injury. They have a bye. He could come back for the Giants game, but like I said yesterday, the Bucs have 3 straight byes. They have a bye week, then they're at the Giants, then they're at Carolina, so they don't need to rush Tristan Wirfs back. Buffalo right tackle Spencer Brown dealing with an ankle injury. I don't know when Jordan Mailata is coming back, but Philadelphia designated left tackle Mailata to return from IR. Maybe he comes back this week, but that's positive news. And Miami right tackle Austin Jackson is on IR. He did not play last night. He'll miss at least 3 more games. All right, top 3 players at each position. Quarterback is pretty good this week. Jamey, who are the top 3 quarterbacks?
I would go Bo Nix, but Bo Nix and Russell Wilson are somewhat interchangeable for this week given their matchups. But I do think Bo Nix has a better upcoming schedule. So if you want to look ahead, go that route and take Nix over Wilson. The third quarterback, just let me get there so I give you the exact guy I have in the column, is
Can I predict?
Jameis Winston.
Jameis Winston. I think he's going to do Jameis Winston wonderful things against the Saints this week.
Were you going to get that right, Dave?
I was not going to get that right. I was going to say Drake May.
Drake May, another guy that I feel like
short week for the Rams.
Yeah, you know what? Like on paper, they're not bad. Then, no, he does have a good schedule. I guess he's done with a great schedule. He's done with the bad schedule portion of his schedule. So Rams and Colts, and then a bye, and then the Cardinals for Drake May. Okay, so that's Nix, Wilson, Winston. Dave would go Wilson 1, then Nix.
Yeah, I've got Wilson 1, Nix 2, May 3. Jameis kind of scares me, and I also think it could be a Nick Chubb game for the Browns, and Winston might not have to do much against New Orleans. But there is something that I need to point out with Russ. If you buy into the history of this series between the Steelers and the Ravens, then you should expect a knockdown, drag-out war without a lot of touchdowns. And that would be problematic for Russell Wilson. So if you think that this is, if just history is going to consume everything that goes on in this matchup and whatever the defenses look like coming into the games doesn't matter, then yeah, you should get Bo Nix first. But I don't believe in that. I think matchups are important, and the Ravens pass defense is brutal right now, and Russ is playing great. So I've got Russ a notch ahead of Bo Nix.
I've said the word matchup probably the word of the day. Pee Wee Herman would be going crazy right now. If
say it on every show.
Yeah, I know. And I just thinking about it, like matchups, because I'm going to break it down big time tomorrow. I'm doing my annual who has the best playoff schedule show tomorrow, and the worst are
you mean the thing that I do every week on Sportsline.
But we'll talk about it together and come to a consensus. Dave always updates the schedules, but I'm just looking. Yeah. Anyway, matchups matter less to me this year, I feel like, than they have in the past. I feel like that's not a quarterback, though. Quarterback's the exception. Quarterback 100% matchup matters. You get a big group of quarterbacks who probably are in the same group, and then you just rank them differently based on the matchups. But especially a wide receiver, I think like there just aren't that many good players. So I don't get too into the matchups. If I have a guy I like, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but I just felt like matchups don't matter as much this year as they have in the past to me.
For teams or players?
For my fantasy lineups.
I mean, so we got a good one this week with Drake London, right? So are you going to start Drake London or sit Drake London?
Does he have the Broncos?
Yep.
Yes.
So that's the one. I'm probably going to try to sit him. But, he'll be in the top 20, I would guess. But I would start like Jawan Jennings and Cortland Sutton, Calvin Ridley, like those types of players over him if they don't have I don't know all the matchups yet. You guys are
I agree
on that. But I just think in general there aren't that many good defenses. There aren't that many scary matchups to me.
There are not that many defenses like that. You can make the case like the Chiefs' run defense is worth avoiding.
Yeah.
You talked about the Vikings' run defense, and I think I don't remember who else you were saying in terms of matchups. Baltimore's run defense has been good. There's clearly examples of it across the board where there's Philly's defense, for example, has turned the corner and is tough to trust players against. But yes, like nobody's benching Jaden Daniels because of Philadelphia's defense this week. I think you're going to continue to start him and just hope that his exceptional play will come through. So it depends. It's case by case. And I think in the way you framed it is we will sit here and say start, sit, matchups X, Y, and Z. And people don't have the luxury of sitting Drake London or DK Metcalf or, the players that have faced Patrick Surtain, for example, so
yeah,
you play in 3 receiver leagues or 2 receivers and a flex, and your receivers and your third and your flex as a receiver. You're not sitting these players. You're just saying, okay, I hope that they have the Zay Flowers game, against that defense, so it's a matter of what your team looks like. It's great in 10-team leagues. You can sit Drake London for some of the receivers you named. You can sit the running backs for the guys that are on your bench that are in good spots. 12-team leagues and larger, you just don't have those luxuries.
I'll tell you, I think McLaurin is someone I'm looking forward to talking about that game tomorrow. But no team is doing better against wide receivers lately than the Eagles. No team has had a better defense than the Eagles in the last 5 games since their bye.
New coordinator in Chicago.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, okay. That was fast.
Shane Waldron's out.
Okay.
Thomas Brown.
Did they name the new coordinator?
Thomas Brown is expected to take over.
That's who I thought it would be. Okay.
Yeah.
I would think that'll mean that they're going to try and just run the ball a little bit more and be a little more running back centric and keep it really simple with the passing game. This might open up Cole Kmet a little bit, but my guess is that they're just going to try and just like shorten the routes for these wide receivers and run the ball a little bit more. And that takes a little bit more pressure off of Caleb Williams. And honestly, as far as pass protection for the offensive line.
I think I mentioned this yesterday, but I wasn't sure. I think they at one point were without all 5 starting offensive linemen when Tevin Jenkins got hurt. So I think they went into the game with 4 backups. So it's hard to be a good coordinator with that situation, but hopefully things change a little bit for them. Okay, sorry for the detour. The top quarterbacks were Bo Nix, Russell Wilson, and Jameis Winston. We'll compare them. You know what? I do think we should compare them, though, to like Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, to the shallow league quarterbacks. Or I'll just ask this. Are Bo Nix or Russell Wilson in your top 12 this week?
Yes.
They are just outside.
All right. So let's go to the running backs. Dave, who are the top 3 running backs?
Estime is number 1 for me. And then I put Tyjae Spears and Jerome Ford 2nd and 3rd, and both those guys are very, very basic. I'm not excited about them at all. If you wanted to speculate on Cam Akers, if you wanted to speculate on one of the other lottery ticket running backs, I don't hate the idea. With Akers obviously being at the top of the list because we just don't know what's going to happen with Aaron Jones. Jones might play, Jones might get hurt, and Akers could be the one that ends up leading this Vikings run game. That's something that's kind of exciting. But to me, it's Estime and then just like a hodgepodge of mediocrity and lottery tickets.
There you go, Adam. Do it.
You don't see. Look at my arm, Dave. I've been doing this for the last 30 seconds.
I don't know what you're doing.
I'm honking the bus horn. What about Gus? What about Gus Edwards?
I don't want to buy into Gus Edwards as being like a lead back for the Chargers. I'm not sure how to read what happened last week.
If Gus Edwards continues to do this, and you have the bonus of what happens to J.K. Dobbins, he might be the number 1 running back, Ted.
Sure, that's a fair point to say, but I also know that he's one of the older backs in the league. Earlier this year, he looked terrible.
Yeah.
He had fresh legs coming into this game last week, and I still think he's going to end up sharing. Yeah, we should add him to the list. I know you did, Jamey. I did not. but he should be added to my list anyway.
My arm is actually tired from that. All right, Estime, Tajay Spears, Cam Akers will be, someone to remember, to consider. Obviously, he'd be higher if we thought Jones were going to miss the game. Dave said Jerome Ford, and we'll throw Gus Edwards in there. It's always a good time to get some handcuffs. Jamey, who are the top wide receivers to get?
So you can say both Colts receivers, Alec Pierce and Adonai Mitchell. I would give the nod to Pierce. Still had more targets, and clearly we've seen the upside of what he can be. And I think it's a good situation for him if Michael Pittman's going to be out. Jerry Jeudy would be second, just given the numbers that he's posted in the 2 games with Jameis Winston, and again, no Amari Cooper, so that target share is probably not going to change. Elijah Moore, like Dave alluded to, is not going to take away from Jeudy, and their kind of roles are defined. But Judy's been productive, 12 plus PPR points in back-to-back games, and then Ricky Pearsall would be third for me. I just don't think in this crowded offense he's going to get consistent enough targets and consistent enough production. And you take away the big touchdown, and I don't think we're really excited about Ricky Pearsall at all.
I'm not excited about any of these guys. That's part of my problem with receiver this week. So I kind of just boiled it down to Pearsall is explosive, and I like his quarterback, and I like his offense, and it's legitimately like the only reason why he's at the top of my list. With Jeudy, I don't love trusting Jerry Jeudy. I recognize that he's put up decent PPR points each of his last 2 games, but he's technically in a crowded offense. The Colts receivers, listen, I've loved Alec Pierce since I laid eyes on him when he was in college, and he's a talented receiver, but I don't know how often he's going to be able to make big plays. Mitchell saw an uptick in playing time. I believe he ran I think he had the same route rate as Downs last week. So Mitchell got an opportunity, and I think he did okay. But what happens when Anthony Richardson comes back? And so are we looking at these guys as rest of season flexes, bye week replacements? Are we talking about guys that are lottery tickets at wide receiver? And I think we kind of need to think through this list a little bit more. Maybe I'm the one that needs to think through this list a little bit more. But there isn't anybody here that I just think is an easy slam dunk as the number 1 guy to add.
I would say that, just thinking about all of our 3 receiver leagues and leagues where I'm starting, last week I started Wan'Dale Robinson and Josh Palmer because 4 teams on bye and injuries and all that stuff. I would love to start Alec Pierce or Jerry Jeudy this week in a desperation sort of. I wouldn't even call it desperation, just as a top 36 wide.
If Pittman's out, Pierce is a top 30 receiver.
Yeah, Pittman being out obviously matters.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. I mean, Pittman's got to be out. You can't trust these guys if Pittman plays.
But Jeudy, I mentioned this 2 weeks ago, so it was like a 3-week stretch, or maybe a 4, whatever. I think 3-week stretch. I think, 3-week stretch going into their bye. You looked at the top 5 players in routes run from weeks 7 through 9, and it was
3 Browns,
4 Cleveland Browns. It was 3 receivers plus Njoku and Kayshon Boutte. So they're in 3 receiver sets all the time. They're throwing the ball all the time. And these guys are getting, all 3 of them are getting like 8 or more targets every game, basically. So, Jeudy had 6 in week 7, but then 8, then 11. Elijah Moore had 6, 12, and 9. They're averaging, 8 or more. So there's appeal there. All right. And, okay, great. I've said my piece. Who are the top tight ends, Dave?
Dawson Knox is the best one that's widely available. I would encourage everybody to just double check to see if one of Mike Gesicki, Tucker Kraft, Taysom Hill, Hunter Henry are available, just because I think that those guys might have some good long-term appeal. Maybe not Gesicki. He's obviously tied to T. Higgins, but you get it. These are players that have scored touchdowns. They've been important parts to their offense at different points during the season. But if there's no Dalton Kincaid and there's no Keon Coleman and Amari Cooper's beat up and the Bills are playing Kansas City and the Chiefs have allowed a ton of fantasy points to tight ends, Dawson Knox makes all the sense in the world. And there really isn't a great number 2 tight end, in my opinion. There's Jonnu Smith. There's Will Dissly. There's Brock Wright, who could be a decent play if Sam Laporta is out for Detroit. And there's Freiermuth in that matchup against Baltimore. That's not a bad matchup for him. But to me, it's Dawson Knox as the top tight end. And maybe somebody we should have mentioned as a top 3 overall.
3% Dawson Knox. 3% roster. Freiermuth is, to me, like equally appealing. The last 5 tight ends against Baltimore, they've just crushed them. Ertz had 68 yards, Otten 100 yards, Njoku 61 yards and a touchdown. Troutman was bad. Gesicki was disappointing, but Tanner Hudson had 42 yards and a touchdown. So those are pretty interesting options this week in Knox and Freiermuth. And then the question is, do you go with them over someone like Dallas Goedert, who's 73% rostered, over Zach Ertz, who's 73% rostered? Would you take those two guys were playing Thursday? Would you take Knox and or Freiermuth over the Thursday guys?
Knox, yes, if Kincaid does not practice for 2 days. Freiermuth, no matter what.
Okay. So if Knox is clearly
I go Freiermuth over Ertz.
Revenge game for him.
Hey.
For Ertz, sure.
Ertz has gotten 8+ targets in 2 of 3 games. The one time he didn't was 2 weeks ago. They played the Giants, who have been really good against tight ends.
Sure. So he would have to have another great game against a team that's been awesome against tight ends. Philly hasn't allowed more than 9 half PPR points to a tight end.
Yeah, but part of that though is volume and how much they'll be throwing in this game. They're not going to run on Philadelphia.
I don't think they will either, but I'm not sure if Ertz is going to be more than just like emergency guy, middle of the field, kind of like he was last week.
All right, Jamey, DSTs.
DSTs, we have the Texans. They're just on the threshold, taking on Cooper Rush. Packers against that Bears offensive line. The Browns against the Saints. I don't buy what the Saints did last week as being anything sustainable. The Dolphins against who knows who is the quarterback for the Raiders, and the Rams don't love them as much, but taking on the Patriots.
And Houston, they have Dallas, then they have Tennessee, then they're at Jacksonville. So you could get a few weeks out of them. Who are the kickers, Jamey?
Brandon McManus taking on the Bears. John Parker Romo taking on the Titans. Josh Carty coming off his field goal fest against the Patriots. Jason Myers, who's just been a consistent kicker against the 49ers. And Jake Bates against the Jaguars.
I would take a look just for IDP. Tyrell Dotson, the Seahawks waived him, and he's their leading tackler. So 2 guys, according to the ESPN article I read, that could replace him are Drake Thomas and Tyrese Wright. But when you get a linebacker who goes out, sometimes you get a lot of production from the backup. Like you look at the Jets situation, the guy who's replaced CJ Mosley, I'm sure he's already added, and mostly he's been really good. So, just take a look at that. Again, the names are Drake Thomas and Tyrese Knight for Seattle. Just kind of maybe do a little research there. Obviously, I'm not a huge IDP guy, but could be something there. Take a break. Shallow leagues, deep leagues, Monday Night Football, blah, and more waiver wire when we come back.
Saturdays at 3:30. It's big time. Saturday on CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
Well, Jamey, I only play in the shallowest of leagues. I don't bother with Dawson Knox or Jerry Jeudy. Who should I be picking up instead of these scrubs?
Let's see. We'll go to quarterbacks first. We can go with Stafford, who hopefully will play better than he did last night, taking on the Patriots. Justin Herbert, who hopefully will throw more than 18 passes.
Do you still have faith?
Will hopefully play better against the Raiders.
Do you still have faith in Stafford? He's been like pretty crappy the last 2 weeks.
I'm going to throw out 2 weeks ago because of Puka's injury, ejection.
Puncha.
Punch on Nakua. Yeah, I mean, look, he hits Kyron on the route there.
Yeah, man, we give like 16 points.
Right.
But we would have felt better about it though. It was definitely ugly. And his upcoming schedule isn't great. But yes, I still have faith in him. I don't think he's I like to do my quarterback rankings Sunday afternoon just to see what happens Sunday evening. And he was top 10 originally, and now he's outside the top 12. So he's not a slam dunk. But again, when we're comparing him to, you get past Bo Nix and Russell Wilson, him versus Jameis, you could certainly have a good argument of who's going to be better, or Drake May, who's going to be better. So he's still in the conversation. Geno's still in the conversation. Tough matchup, like you said, against San Francisco, but he's still averaging 38 pass attempts per game, and he's getting DK Metcalf back. And Rodgers taking on the Colts is not something that I would worry about.
Okay, if there were a prize there between Herbert, Geno, Stafford, Tua, Rodgers, who would it be?
Herbert.
Okay. Yeah. Shallow league running backs, anyone appealing?
Is there anyone appealing? Yes, of course there is. There are more handcuffs. So Jonathan Brooks now is viewed as a handcuff as opposed to a replacement, but Miles Sanders is probably going to miss some time seeing a foot specialist. Tyler Algier, Ray Davis, Jalen Warren, and Braylon Allen. Outside of Warren, these guys are all potential lottery tickets. So we're sitting here telling you to pick up some of these other guys that if there's an injury occurs, then you're going to love their setup. It's the same thing with, I think, Brooks, Algier, Davis, and Braylon Allen. And for Jalen Warren, it sucks that he had the fumble there because it looked like he was about to take over the job with how that game was unfolding. 12 carries for 66 yards, 2 catches, 29 yards. I'd like to see a little bit more work in the passing game for him. But to see him get, 14 total touches and, look explosive with it, I would like that on my team if they don't punish him for the fumble.
Between Warren, Spears, Estime, and Edwards, and I'm like, for all I know, those guys aren't available in your leagues. I don't know, but they are available in a decent amount of leagues. At least these are guys who are getting touches, right? I mean, these are guys who have a chance to give you something and are involved in the regular offense, and they also have handcuff appeal. So it's not so bad this week at running back, even though we really don't have any injuries, knock on wood. All right, wide receivers.
Wide receivers, you have, so I adjusted this based on the list as we talked about with some of the percentages. So Juwan Jennings is still in this range. He's at 81% rostered. Cedric Tillman's at 78% rostered, I believe. Those two would be immediate adds if they're available. Jacoby Myers is at 85% if people dropped him going into his bye week. He could be available in some 10-team leagues. And then Romeo Doubs, I think, is still worth buying into. I know he didn't have a good game last time we saw him, but Jordan Love was gimping around with a groin injury. He's at 76%.
Tight ends, a lot of tight ends in the 70-ish% range.
Yep. So you have Tucker Kraft, who has scored a touchdown in 4 of 6 games with Jordan Love since he came back from his initial injury. Mike Gesicki is obviously tied to T. Higgins. I'm still going to look at Taysom Hill as a potential starter, taking on the Browns, given his role. Zach Ertz, I think, is going to see in the neighborhood of 8 targets again, so I don't mind him even in a tough matchup in deeper leagues. Dallas Goedert has just been productive in almost every game he's played this season. A lot of it has been injuries, but now Devontae Smith is banged up, so I don't have a problem with him. And then Hunter Henry, first down game with Drake May, only 4.2 PPR points, but I still think that had a lot to do with how the game was unfolding. They're probably in a shootout or chasing points against the Rams, so I think Hunter Henry's numbers bounce back.
Okay, and Dave, none of these guys are available. Oh, actually, there was a comment about what I sound like. It was pretty funny. Said the deep league guy is a gold prospector, and the shallow league guy is Jason Alexander. Is that who that sounded like? Jason Alexander?
No, I don't think they know who Jason Alexander is if they think that's Jason Alexander.
But none of these guys are available in my league, Dave. Don't waste my time. Who should I get?
All right, gold prospector. Let's start with Jameis Winston, 80% available, has New Orleans, has upside. You know the deal with him. After that, unless we're counting Joe Flacco, we're looking at Will Levis, Cooper Rush, Mac Jones, insert Raiders quarterback here. It's not pretty. At running back, fortunately, 2 of the names that we've already talked about are widely available. Estime, 85% available. Gus Edwards, 82% available. When I look down at the list of running backs that are good handcuffs, they're all in like the 2/3 or better range. So Akers, Jalen Wright, Blake Corum, Trey Benson, Jaleel McLaughlin, Keaton Mitchell's 81% available. Khalil Herbert, Ike Garendo, those guys are available in 2/3 of leagues. I don't even want to talk about guys like mega desperation, Samaje Perine, Dario Gumbawale, Ty Johnson, Cordero Patterson. I can't recommend them as starts unless you're in like the deepest of deep leagues. Receiver, Adonai Mitchell, 91% available. John Mechie, 97% available. Those are the headliners. Mike Williams, I think, is worth a stash at 81% available. It's not because he caught a touchdown last week. It's because I think his opportunities will continue to grow in that offense. And again, desperate at wide receiver, Mac Hollins, MVS, Nick Westbrook-Akine. They're all kind of the same guy. They're all skinny, downfield, boom bust types of receivers. Okay as like bye week replacements in deep leagues. Nobody that you should really count on. Like, don't go chasing MVS and what he did on 3 targets last week, particularly against Cleveland this coming week. As a bye week guy, you want to throw a dart at and be my guest. And then Dawson Knox, 97% available at tight end. I would go with Dallas Goedert. I like Goddard's matchup more than I do Dawson Knox's, but he would be first. Disley would be second. Brock Wright would be third at tight end.
And don't forget, I'm sorry if you said this, but you got guys like Desmond Ridder, you've got Drew Lock or Tommy DeVito. If you're in a deep super flex league, or not even that deep, and now look, I would probably rather start like a wide receiver over those guys, but they could, and Mac Jones too. These are guys who could be starting quarterbacks.
So it's a great point about what to do if you don't have a quarterback in that spot. Now they obviously have more upside. Just if they throw one touchdown and then whatever yards they give you, they're going to be probably in the 15-point range on a good day for some of those guys. But
in a 6-point per passing league, yes.
Right. Still better potential than some of these other, if you're starting MVS, for example, coming off you're chasing points, by comparison to starting one of these quarterbacks. But we did just see Cooper Rush have, I think it was 5 points. Mac Jones was around 5 points. Like they do stink for a reason, and you could be left with just absolute trash in those spots.
Okay. Hey, I meant to ask you, Jamey, when you were talking about the shallow league guys, would you drop Jonathan Brooks for Audric Estime?
Yeah, I think you have to. Just given the setup of what both players are looking at.
Oh, Jonathan Brooks. I feel bad for anyone who didn't have an IR spot and kept him this long.
That's me in one of my leagues, literally one of my leagues.
Though there was a brief moment in that game in Germany where Miles Sanders was out and Hubbard fumbled and looked like he was hurt.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, what happens coming off their bye week? Like there's still a scenario where he's a difference maker for you. Again, you just put him in, he goes from, okay, maybe taking the job, maybe being a factor, to now he's a lottery ticket. So I still want to roster that if I can.
Okay, fellas. Let's talk about last night's stupid game. It's a little personal to me because I had a lot of matchups on the line last night, and I think I benefited in 2 of them from the low scoring game, and I lost in 2 of them for the low. So whatever, but I just was hoping for like a real fun shootout, and it just didn't happen.
Right.
But, I don't know. What are your thoughts on Tyreek Hill? Right, 82% started. He played most of the snaps. He had 4 targets, 3 catches for 16 yards, and the touchdown. Thank goodness he caught that touchdown. And he's got this torn wrist ligament and might need surgery. Is this someone that we should be trying to offload as quickly as possible?
Who's trading high end value for him right now, though?
Would you take Juwan Jennings for Tyreek Hill?
No.
But you had to think about it. Would you take Darnell Mooney for Tyreek Hill?
No.
Correct me if I'm wrong on this.
You're wrong.
It's been 8 weeks since he's had more than 15 PPR points in a game, Tyreek Hill.
It's week 1, right?
Yeah, week 1. And then I think that's when the wrist came into play, was that game. So there's been a couple of games where he's had more than 8 targets. He had a 10-target game. He had a 9-target game. I've got the box score open on my screen. I just wanted to make sure that I was right on that PPR message. But, man, there's no way anybody should view him as anything more than like a low-end number 2 wide receiver who's like maybe a partial decoy. Like, is his job just to try and drag 2 defenders downfield with him to open things up underneath for, Waddle in theory, but also Jonnu Smith now and Odell Beckham and the running backs? I'd be very skeptical that all of a sudden Tyreek Hill is going to break out and have a monster game. But that being said, they are playing Vegas this coming week. That's a really favorable matchup across the board. And you could see Tyreek Hill finally cross over to 15 PPR points in that game. But I think he's a number 2 receiver at best.
They have some winnable games left. They're 3-6. I think they're a game and a half out of the last playoff spot. But if they lose in one of the next 2 games to like Las Vegas or New England, it's basically the CeeDee Lamb argument, right? It's like they could easily shut him down. I mean,
yes.
Right. So this is a guy that on a bad team, but I don't think they're that bad. And I do think they can make a little bit of a run here, but they're also pretty close to being out of playoff contention. So
I mean, the last spot is still wide open. And the broadcast was talking about how they remained optimistic that they still have a chance. And yes, obviously they can't afford losses, but I don't think they're going to be completely out of it if let's say they get upset by the Raiders. So could he shut it down? Sure.
No, I'm not saying they're going to shut it down next week if they lose. I'm just saying that a team that's 3-6 with a guy who's playing through with a torn ligament in his wrist, you could see them. It's realistic, right? To see them shutting him down.
Yeah, but I don't think that happens until maybe one of the last 2 games of the season. Because even if there's 4 games left in the year and they're mathematically eliminated, they just go on a terrible losing streak, whatever. Tyreek's still going to want to play. So I don't know. I think you have to keep that in the back of your mind if you have Tyreek on your team or if you acquire Tyreek Hill on a dirt cheap basis. But it's clear he's not the same guy. The wrist appears to be part of the problem.
I mean, you should be trying to sell him if you can, but don't sell him for Jawan Jennings or Darnell Mooney at this point.
Just sell him for Malik Neighbors.
You would absolutely take Darnell Mooney for Tyreek Hill at this point.
Oh, Dave would take him.
I would not.
Mooney, yes.
I would not.
Would you, so Neighbors, Schaefer wanted me to ask Neighbors or Tyreek Hill. I think it's a good question.
Neighbors.
That I would do.
The other problem is that Tua is throwing the ball 5 yards down the field. It's pathetic. They have absolutely no explosive passing game. They're just Devon Achane is their top receiver. It's really frustrating. They're just not pushing the ball downfield at all. He's got the lowest air yards per pass attempt in the NFL. On the other side of the ball, I think you're just going to keep starting Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. Kyron Williams has been a little bit disappointing lately, but he still gets he had 5 catches, but he still gets a ton of touches. So those guys are starts.
94% of the snaps.
Yeah. So it is what it is, but you're fine there. All right, let's go to the drop-o-meter. Also, Raheem Mostert is,
he might end up being like 3rd string for the Dolphins. Like Jalen Wright might end up getting more opportunities. He did
Wright
last
didn't
night.
do anything to help himself. He got the role, but 5 carries for 3 yards is not going to necessarily say, "Oh,
No,
wow,
it's
we have
true.
to."
He didn't have good vision on a lot of his runs.
We have
There
to
was
bench
one
Mostert.
run.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, Jamey took a little shot at my IDP team earlier in the week.
Oh, you beat me, but my team's still better.
Jay, my team is so much better than Adams, and I'm 2-6-1, and now you're 2-7-1.
Yeah,
Not because of Tyreek, not because of Kyron Williams, but because of Kobe Turner last night for the Rams, getting me 10.5 points.
That's going to be one of those teams I look back on and how did I not do better? I mean, just every week somebody just complete, like Jared Goff, 5 interceptions. Like, how's that happen?
You got
Sounds
30.
like my FFT Open team.
You got 35 points from Goff, Gibbs, and Brees Hall.
Yeah,
that's I got 33 points from Jalen Hurts. That's fantasy football. Yeah. All right, fellas, let's do the drop.
By the way, we got to give Dan his credit. He won in the magazine league.
No way! Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! 1-9.
He got his win.
Oh, that's great.
I will not say.
Oh,
He didn't beat me.
It wasn't me, was it?
No. No one that's on our show, but I don't want to embarrass anybody.
No, you just embarrassed Dan for being 1-9. All right, drop-o-meter.
Dan needs somebody in upper management that we don't want to embarrass.
Okay. Brian Thomas Jr.
Can't embarrass the boss.
No, don't drop him.
No, 0.
All right.
We're playing dropometer?
Yeah.
0. Yeah.
Xavier Worthy.
2.
8.
That equals a 10. Jamey's still hanging on to Xavier Worthy. Okay.
I want to see what he does this week in the trade gate. That's the team that traded him away.
Oh, yeah.
I don't see how you can have any confidence starting him.
I have no confidence in him, but if he has a good game against the Bills, I don't want to have somebody else pick him up.
Then they have Carolina, Las Vegas after that. DJ Moore, drop-o-meter.
0.
4.
Jake Ferguson.
2.
3.
Would you drop Jake Ferguson for Dawson Knox?
If I need a win this week, yes.
I would have to know for sure that Dalton Kincaid is out before I do such a thing. So here's what I might do. If I'm in a league that starts kickers, I'll drop my kicker, pick up Knox, have an illegal roster. And then once I know the deal with Dalton Kincaid, if Kincaid's in, I drop Knox, pick up a kicker. If Kincaid's out, I start Knox, I drop Ferguson, pick up a kicker.
I think when you look at Brian Thomas and CeeDee Lamb, you probably got the very worst versions of Mac Jones and Cooper Rush, right? It's not going to be good, but it should be better than that. I just really hope they don't go to Trey Lance.
Well, in the case of Cooper Rush, sure, because you could have made the case that CD should have caught that touchdown that he lost in the sun. Rush threw a good ball, but even if he catches it, he's got like 15.5 PPR points.
I know, but
not the same CD Lamb that we had last year.
That goes without saying. I'm just saying that Cooper Rush. Do you know how many yards he threw for? Does everybody know his stats?
I can look it up. You need me to look it up?
No, he threw 23 passes for 45 yards. He had one of the worst games in football history, Cooper Rush. So
Trey Lance.
That's not an exaggeration. That's one of the worst.
Trey Lance doesn't know the playbook. I think they only have a certain package of plays for Lance, and they're not ready to
I'm saying
run just that.
Cooper Rush is not going to be historically bad. And the Jaguars had the ball for 17 and a half minutes. So that's not going to, things will get a little bit better.
Did you see, by the way, the stupidity of what happened with the Cowboys?
I don't know.
What are you talking about?
The curtains about not with the sun and all that?
Yeah.
And then what happened at Mike McCarthy's press conference?
Yeah. They had a sun blocker at his press conference.
They had a sun blocker at his press conference so that he wouldn't have the sun in his eyes while he was talking to me.
Oh my gosh, man. Jerry Jones is like, wow, why don't we just tear down the whole building and build a new one? It's like, dude, just put the curtains up, man. What's with you?
Call Budget Blinds. They'll come out. They'll give you a free estimate.
Can't they just close them when they're in that end zone and then open them when the other team is?
There you go. All right, waiver wire. So the quarterbacks, we like Justin Herbert in the shallow leagues if you can get him. There's also Stafford, Tua, Geno Smith, and Aaron Rodgers. But Bo Nix. All right, Bo Nix or Geno this week?
Bo.
Next.
Russell Wilson or Geno this week?
Wilson.
Russell Wilson, Bo Nix or Tua this week?
Nix and Wilson.
Wilson, Nix, Tua Tagovailoa. Oh, he's playing the Raiders, man. I would expect him to have a big game. I don't know if I can count on that.
Bo Nix, Russell Wilson, or Justin Herbert this week?
Herbie.
Nix and Wilson.
All right. There's Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston over under 18 fantasy points at the Saints.
Over.
Under.
Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco threw for 272 yards against the Bills. The interceptions are terrible, but he can get the ball downfield. He's at the Jets this week. We know they're kind of, paper tigers. Will Levis facing Minnesota. Minnesota's actually pretty good against quarterbacks. Will Levis coming off a good game. Something to keep an eye on with Levis.
His schedule, great.
After this, at Houston, at Washington, Jacksonville, Cincinnati. Yeah, it is great.
So he's a great 2 QB super flex ad if he's available. He's only 11% rostered. So there's going to be leagues I know a league I play on Sleeper, a super flex league. He was available going into last week. I'm assuming he's still available. So that's one where I don't mind stashing him just to see if he has a decent game against Minnesota. Then hey, why not?
And I think he's at the point, and the Titans are at that point in the season where he would have to really stink it up in order to get benched again. They let him play out the rest of the year, see if he improves at all.
All right, let's go to the running backs. A lot of handcuffs out there, but I don't think I compared Jalen Warren to Audric Estime because he's just above the threshold of 65%. Warren 66%. Who would you guys rather have, Warren or Estime?
Estime.
I'd rather have Estime, but we're sitting here praising a guy for 14 carries for 53 yards.
Best run defense in football, though, he did face.
Agreed. Matchup was great. He still has 2 guys on his team that are healthy. He doesn't have a target all season. Warren, playing in tandem with the guy who we know has had a hard time being consistent. He's done a great job this season, but has had a hard time being consistent. And just had 12 carries for 66 yards. I'm telling you, if he didn't fumble, he may have started to eat into Najee's workload a little bit more. He still might. And you're getting the passing downs work. He's going to be a better start more times than not than Estime.
In PPR, right?
In PPR.
But the thing about PPR, he's not really getting that many targets. He has 2 to 3 targets in every game but one this season. I think he left that one in early. And he has no more than 3 targets. I did want to point that out about Warren. He's not playing that role that he used to play. They just don't Wilson's just not throwing to him.
Right. That's partially a Russ thing and partially just the way that offense is operating. And we've got a year and a half of waiting for Jalen Warren to overtake Najee Harris, and it just hasn't happened.
Well, he was better in PPR last year than Najee.
They were about the same.
Yeah,
he was better by like 1/10 of a point on average.
Yeah,
that's fair.
All right, so estimate Gus Edwards, Cam Akers. If Aaron Jones were out this week, would Cam Akers crack the top 24?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. I mean, Tennessee's got a really good run defense. They give up touchdowns. Akers stinks. Like, we know this. He lost his job in Houston. He was like, he got Agumba in Houston. So I wouldn't want to buy too much into it if he got the chance. But I understand some people were like, oh,
Adam.
And I started Chris Rodriguez in the league last week. I'd kill for Cam Akers. And then Tajay Spears, and then a bunch of handcuffs. And wide receivers. All right, you got the Browns guys. Tillman would be the prize. Would you rather have Romeo Doubs or Alec Pierce?
Dobbs.
If Pittman is out, I'm starting Pierce this week over Dobbs.
I'm thinking rest of season.
Rest of season, Dobbs.
Okay. And then there's Jerry Jeudy. Would you rather have Jerry Jeudy or Adonai Mitchell?
Judy.
Judy's the safer of the two.
Dave kind of likes Ricky Pearsall.
I like Ricky Pearsall. There's no kinda about it.
As a fantasy
As
option.
a talent, I like him a lot. As a fantasy receiver, I think you could use him as a number 3. But you can rewind 25 minutes ago, and I'll tell you why. Yeah, I explained why Pearsall was at the top of my list.
I was thinking about it. Like, Pearsall could be 5th on the team in targets. However, he could be within like 2 targets of the target leader, right?
Right.
You know, they could just spread it around so much. Xavier Leggett, I got a little disappointed. He just doesn't get that many targets. It was one game with more than 40 yards this year, I think, and he's in a bye. And schedule, and then he goes to Kansas City. There's Christian Watson. Maybe he can get something going. Demario Douglas. If they have to throw more, he could be good. What about Kayshon Boutte? Any interest in him?
Deeper leagues.
He's literally the last name on my wide receiver list.
What about Rashad Bateman coming off a big game, 37% rostered?
You know,
He's right after the group we just showed.
yeah, I agree. But you've got to kind of couch him as a boom bust type of flex who doesn't get a ton of volume from week to week.
And then there's John Mechie. Then there's a few guys who had big games last week. John Mechie, Mike Williams, who had 1 catch, 32-yard touchdown for the Steelers, and Mac Hollins, who had 86 yards for the Bills, and we know they're injured. Dave, thoughts on Mechie, Mike Williams, Mac Hollins?
I want to make sure I get this right. I know for a fact that Mechie played a ton in the slot last week. 71% route rate, was 3rd best among Texans wide receivers. 6 targets, 5 catches, 74 yards, touchdown. And I believe a short area guy. No, he actually had a high ADOT because of that one big catch he had. That's why. I'm intrigued by Mechie. I remember loving him at Alabama. Then he went through the whole cancer issue, came out of it the other side, and he's great. Could he end up having a role rest of season as the slot guy, but the number 3 receiver in Houston? And I think the answer to that question is yes, but it's with an asterisk because I don't know how often he's going to get 6, 7 targets in a game. He might be someone that gets 3 targets in a game. So I'm excited as long as Nico's out. We think Nico will be back this week. We said that last week, and he didn't play. But Mechie's someone who I think is going to get a role in Houston. It's just a matter of how much will he get with it.
And then keep an eye on Noah Brown. Noah Brown has 6 or more targets in 4 of his last 5 games. It's 6 to 8 targets. He's been okay. This is Noah Brown of Washington. So he's 35% rostered. Devon Vele is another guy. And then MBS, whatever. Well, I don't think
Jermaine Burton is a stash if you're in the deepest of leagues. But again, if T. Higgins comes back, I don't know what good he's going to do you. And I think I just talked myself out of Mechie by bringing up Nico Collins coming back.
Tight ends. How many of these guys would you start over Dawson Knox? Would you start Tucker Kraft over Dawson Knox?
No, not if Kincaid's out.
Yeah, obviously, assuming Kincaid is out. Would you start Mike Gesicki? If Higgins and Kincaid are both out, would you start Gesicki or Knox?
It's Gesicki.
Taysom Hill or Dawson Knox?
Knox.
Yep.
Zach Ertz.
Closer in non-PPR.
I already did Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert, but we'll do it again. The Thursday guys, Ertz, Goddard, or Knox?
There's a lot at play there because if Devontae Smith is out, Goddard is easy. I would go Knox over both, though, if Kincaid's out.
I'll give Goddard the nod, even if Devontae Smith plays, but it's really close between Goddard and Knox. Ertz is 3rd.
Hunter Henry against the Rams or Dawson Knox?
Henry.
Fox and Sox or Knox in box? Dawson Knox is the top priority, followed by Pat Freiermuth, a great matchup against the Ravens. Jonnu Smith. I mean, Jonnu Smith only had 4 targets, but nearly scored. Oh, it was fun. I was watching the game with someone who was like basically tied going into the game, and he was facing Waddle, and he had Jonnu and Demarcus Robinson, and he was on tilt, and it was so close. That touchdown would have won the game for them. He came up a yard short, but then that last catch on the last drive from Robinson won him the game. So it was fun to see. Jonnu Smith, Davis Allen. We didn't talk about this. He's the starting tight end now, I guess. He played most of the snaps for the Rams. Yep. So he's a guy, and he had 5 catches last night. And then there's Brock Wright, Jatavian Sanders on a bye, but the matchups are very good, and he's been coming on lately.
You could wait till Saturday to pick up Sanders if you want him.
And same with Theo.
Davis Allen had an 89.8% route rate. Colby Parkinson had 14.3. This has been multiple weeks going. So Allen is the top tight end in LA.
That's pretty interesting. All right. Those guys aren't terrible. They have a pulse. And, here we go. The deep league guy, Will Dissly. Will Dissly has 6 or more targets in 3 of his last 4 games. He dropped a touchdown last week, and he's got a great schedule coming up. Holy cow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 straight opponents that currently rank 20th or worse against tight ends. Will Dissly is there, the deep league guy that I meant to mention earlier. Damn it. Will Dissly.
I brought him up. I said his name after Dawson Knox.
Oh, crap. I'm sorry. I didn't hear that.
You trust him, though, with Hayden Hurst back? That's the problem.
Yeah, maybe if he's really his role flipped after the bye. So I don't know if Hayden Hurst has done anything to warrant.
Well, that's when Hurst got injured. Going into the bye week, he got hurt.
Anything that Hayden Hurst can do.
Well, he just came back last week. So
field. I don't want to sit here and stump for Will Dissly saying that he's going to be a league winner, anything like that.
Oh, I will. He will be a league. No, he will not be. All right, DSTs, and I'm sorry, I completely missed it.
Surprised if he is.
Texans, Packers, Browns, Dolphins, Rams. They are the DSTs that we like as streamers. Texans ahead of the pack. Texans have 3 good matchups in a row. Kickers, McManus, John Parker Romo, Josh Carty, Jason Myers, Jake Bates. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you at 1 o'clock on CBS Sports Network. Have a good one.